Mr. Scribner, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act provided $108 billion for public transportation. That's a 77% increase over the prior FTA authorization. This funding came not long after the collection of COVID relief bills had pumped a total of nearly $70 billion in supplemental emergency funding to transit agencies. Even with those historic funding levels, many public transportation agencies now report that they will face fiscal uncertainty in the next few years. So if a once-in-a-generation funding increase didn't provide long-term financial stability for the nation's transit agencies, what will?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. As I said in my opening statement and in more detail in my written testimony, I do think some of these major operational efficiencies can only be realized by trying to reduce the excessive costs of labor. We have seen the trend lines both before the pandemic and after continue to go down and in terms of labor productivity. And I think if you look globally at some of the solutions that peer or near-peer countries have adopted, especially in contracting and then on heavy rail systems, automation, I think you can realize substantial operating cost savings there and get a lot more bang for your buck.
Thanks. Appreciate your insights. So, Ms. Hendricks, the North American Transit Alliance is comprised of the 5 largest private transit contracting firms. Many transit agencies often choose to work with contractors to maximize their limited budgets to achieve a shared goal of all of us here today, improving the transit passenger experience. And when an agency engages the services of a transit contractor, it follows guidance outlined in FTA's Best Practices Manual and Lessons Learned Manual. As I understand it, FTA has not updated this guidance document since 2016. That's 8 years ago and one pandemic ago. Clearly, the landscape in public transportation has changed in that time. Does NATA have recommendations for how or when FTA should update this best practices manual?
Yes, the North American Transit Alliance, as referred to in my written testimony, would advise for an advisory committee, as I mentioned. We would also ask that the procurement process be streamlined with external input to ensure that the process is better detailed, including the metrics and the information that's required for a contractor to put a successful competitive bid together, meaning the details of the collective bargaining agreement, the scheduling, or is referred to as the run cut, the liquidated damages, and in partnership, how can we best streamline this process to open up, to be more competitive and more conducive? We would also ask that the timeline to respond be conducive to all thoroughness of a competitive bid process. So we have suggested to the FTA the streamlining process, the lengths of the contract, and ways that outside input can help be more efficient and cost-effective to service the communities.
Thank you. And Ms. Maynard, as I mentioned in my opening statement, crime on transit systems across the country is on the rise, especially in our major cities. While the vast majority of trips on transit take place without incident, the violent nature of the attacks that I mentioned continue to fuel the perception that all public transit systems are unsafe. What policies has the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada instituted to address rider and worker safety during and since the pandemic?
Chairman, thank you for that question. You know, public transit as a public space is truly the rolling microcosm of what's happening in any urban city. And if crime is increasing, if the unhoused population is increasing, if drug addiction, mental addiction, if that's increasing or it's prevalent, you're going to see it on public transit. And we understand that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution for that. Public transit agencies around the United States, including the RTC, are looking at ensuring that we are making safety a priority. So whether it's for the drivers, the passengers, and we're doing things like driver enclosure enhancements. We at the RTC have the GPS response button that if a driver needs something, they can literally press a button. It's GPS based. We know where they are on the bus or off the bus, and we can immediately respond by way of our security department. It's very important that we continue to partner with our local law enforcement, whether that's by way of an MOU or actually having them work on your system. For our customers, it's about presence, and so we have invested at the RTC in additional security officers to ensure that they are following data, where the incidents may occur, that's where they are assigned. And then again, because we are a reflection of what's happening in the urban city, we are now, many transit systems are working with the local jurisdictions with their social services to connect the folks on our system that may be unhoused, that may be veterans that seeking medical attention, mental drug addiction, and we're finding that we have the same customer base again because it is part of, again, what's happening in the urban core, and trying to solve for those social ills and how they spill into public transit is a complex problem. Definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. So it's going to be, again, ensuring that the operators are safe by way of enclosures and technology, ensuring that passengers can see enforcement efforts by law enforcement or the security officers that are employed by transit agencies, and ensuring that we are investing our time with those social services to ensure that we again, try to help solve for a very complex problem that is not necessarily a transit problem.
Thank you. Ms. Holmes Norton.
Mr. Regan, your testimony notes that too often